Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with episode 674 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We will be breaking down everything that happened across NXT and AEW this week. Of course, you had NXT coming off a successful, albeit slightly disappointing, edition of NXT Deadline featuring the two Iron Survivor Challenge matches. Meanwhile, you have AEW quickly on its build to its final show of 2024, World's End. As always, we have a ton to discuss right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, so let's not waste any additional time. Off the top, allow me to remind you first that this show
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at Getting Overcast and follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast plus Blue Sky at Getting Over, the latter two, for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can send in questions and comments for the show. We will do our best to include them in our programming. I also want to make sure that you know that Getting Over has indeed been nominated for 2025 Wrestling Podcast of the Year from the Sports Podcast Awards. You will remember we actually won that award a year ago, and we would love to go back to back. You can vote for us right now, kind of as many times as you want. All you have to do is go to our Twitter account at Getting Overcast or our Blue Sky account at Getting Over and check the pinned post. That is the ballot. Click that link, put in your vote for Getting Over. We would greatly appreciate your support. We want to be the back-to-back wrestling podcast of the year. And lastly, please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
And I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news posts, usually on Fridays. That is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. All right, we got a ton to talk about today. We're going to start with NXT. We're going to move to AEW in the second half of the show. As always, there are timestamps in the episode description. So if you need to or want to jump around, you can go ahead and check that out. Click the time, apparently, is a really cool feature now I've seen on Apple and Spotify and YouTube as well, where you can literally click the time. It'll jump you to where you want to go. As always, though, I hope you listen to the entire show. And in terms of any ratings discussion that we might have based on when we're taping, as usual, if the ratings happen to come out before the end of the show, we will cover them. If not, we'll either ignore it for the week or we'll circle back next week. So kicking off with NXT, before we get into Tuesday's show, we're going to do a quick second look at NXT Deadline. So let's go match by match real quick. I did watch it entirely again, and I will say, as a general statement, I enjoyed it more on second watch, just not that much more where it changed much of my takes on the matches and decisions. So we had the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge, Sol Ruca, Julia Stephanie Vaquer, Zarya, and Ren Sinclair. I gave this an A, 4.25 stars, sticking with it. It was crazy that in a match with Julia Vaquer and Zarya, Sol and Ren were the standouts. It was a star-making performance for Ruca. Sinclair displayed literally everything that you need if you're going to spend the next decade in WWE as a talent. Immense character and personality, high-level wrestling skill, immense timing, the ability to work up to your opponent's talent. She's a B-side now, but Ren can absolutely be an A-side in WWE. I'm so impressed with her. Always happy to Barry Horowitz myself calling her out shortly after she debuted. Between her and Jada Parker, those are where I'm tapping my back and I'm saying, Silver King, you got those right. No question about it. Men's Iron Survivor Challenge, Javon Evans, Wesley, Ethan Page, Nathan Frazier, and the to-be-announced competitor was indeed Oba Femi. I tried not to let fans affect my enjoyment of matches, they did in this case. Watching it back, I focused more on the wrestling and the layout of the match. I still couldn't really go above 3.5 stars and a B, my original grade. The Oba part was better than I remembered. I think I downplayed that a little bit on the instant analysis, but the opening 5 minutes was immensely rough, and not having Javon, Wes, and Nathan just go wild with falls to amp up the excitement at the beginning, that was a huge mistake. There are also too many spots in this match, and really across the board in both Iron Survivors, where they did falls with roll-ups. I wanted more impactful moments, especially in the men's match. It was still good, also still one of the weakest Iron Survivor Challenge matches. NXT Championship Trick Williams and Ridge Holland, I gave it 2.5 stars and a C, and I have absolutely nothing to add. Immensely frustrated with Trick's booking, the men's main event singles division as a whole, and really, I thought about this a little bit further coming out of the rewatch. Pretty much the way every Trick Williams match is booked. I mean, he has a good string of offense. The fans are really excited about him. And then he fights from under, even though he's the bigger guy and he's more athletic than usually his competitors. And at the end, he is almost beaten. And then all of a sudden, he hits trick shot and wins. And it's just sudden. And if that's supposed to be him escaping by the skin of his teeth, okay. But your champion shouldn't be doing that every single time he wrestles. And again, trick shot as a finisher for him just doesn't make any sense. It does not take advantage of his immense qualities. It doesn't utilize his charisma, such as you would see with a rock bottom or a people's elbow, where you're seeing the person's visual reaction and selling of the move. It doesn't take advantage of his strength or athleticism. It's a guy jumping up and hitting a knee. I can do that. I wouldn't do it as well as him, and I certainly wouldn't get as high off the ground as he would, but I can do it. I want to see something, maybe not that I can't do or that you can't do, but I want to see something unique to this character. And a running pump knee, just like Ricochet's stupid spirit gun finisher, which is pretty much the same as Hidden Blade, which Will Ospreay does, who he's wrestling currently in AEW. It needs to be something unique and different. And the fact that Ricochet, I know that Ricochet can't necessarily do a 450, or I think his other move was a 630 senton. I know it's not safe for him to do that in every single match, but you can come up with something else. A springboard 450 is one. Then you do the 630 senton when you need to win a title. You have another finisher that he was using. It was some kind of like Michinoku driver or Falcon Arrow. I forget exactly what the move was. That's fine. I didn't like it still. I thought it didn't take advantage of his athleticism, but it at least was unique-ish to him. The pump knee, running pump knee from Trick is not unique. And then doing the trick kick, which is actually Trouble in Paradise, which literally Kofi Kingston has done for 15 years. That's not unique to him either. It's unbelievable that the main champion of this company, of this brand on the men's side, has no discernible quality finisher. It's just horrendous. And again, the way they book his matches with him just popping up at the end to get the win, and it's every single time, and it's never dramatic. It's like they lost the secret sauce of what Trick Williams was between last year's Iron Survivor Challenge and this year's Iron Survivor Challenge. They got to find it. Lola Vice and Jada Parker, NXT Underground. I maintain my 3.25 star B grade on this one. It just did not compare to their hardcore match, which I believe I had at 3.75 and a B+. It was just the wrong match type for Jada, but it actually worked out in kayfabe because she stepped into Lola's territory. The rubber match should absolutely be Fight Pit or Steel Cage or something like that, and it is a match that I would want to see. The Tag Team Championships, Fraxium successfully defending against Miles Bourne and Tavian Heights, 4.25 stars and an A, sticking with that as well. This was a perfect PLE tag team match. Fraxium is the best active tag team in the game right now. They have put on the best tag team matches in 2024 as well, full stop. Standout effort from Heights. Some great value Randy Orton vibes from Bourne in a positive way. You'll hear me say that about someone else a little bit later in the show. Loved this. Loved what they did with Fraxium on NXT. We're going to talk about that in a moment. And let's just keep our fingers crossed that they don't break up anytime soon. I gave it an 87 out of 100 B+. I was going to go up a point. I don't really know that matters enough to change the grade, so I'm not going to. 87 out of 100 to B+. All of you listeners were at 88. So the second look on NXT Deadline is pretty much what the first look was, but just with a little additional detail. So let's go ahead and move to what happened on NXT television this week. Julia opened the show celebrating her win, declaring she will be the next champion, as one does. Easily the best English that she's spoken since moving to the United States. Roxanne Perez interrupted with strange praise for everyone in the Iron Survivor Challenge and the women's division as a whole, saying Julia isn't on her level. Cora Jade showed up threatening with a kendo stick, pointing to the Titantron where Stephanie Vaquer was shown having been attacked. Kalani Jordan ultimately saved a 2-on-1 beating, and that was the segment. Left a good amount to be desired, I would say. WWE needs to figure out how to get Julia to build and sell matches despite the language barrier. A promo segment where Roxy and Cora need to carry the weight is not it. That is literally the weakest part of their games. And if you're putting them in a segment with someone who does not speak fluent English, and that's okay, obviously. But if you're trying to do a promo segment with those three individuals, it is ultimately not going to be successful. Later backstage, Julia ranted in Japanese, angry about what happened to Vaquer. Jordan said she was sick of Roxy and Cora thinking they run NXT when they couldn't run a lemonade stand in the desert. That was a John Cena, 2014 ass line right there. Maybe I'm getting the year wrong, but it was a John Cena corny ass line. Roman Reigns suffer and succotash bullshit line right there. They decided to fight them as a tag team later in the show. This was solid overall, the backstage segment. Definitely an improvement from Lani, despite that awful line that she was fed. The passion was there. The voice was much closer to where it needs to be. The believability still needs some work, but major steps up from her the last 3 weeks. You guys know we've been critical about Lani on the show, and there is nothing that makes me happier. I don't care what company, what brand, what performer it is. But when I'm critical about someone, and even if they make alterations to their game that have nothing to do with the criticisms that I'm levying, if they change it differently than I suggest, let's say. But when they make those changes and you see them actually progressing, nothing makes me happier. And there is clear progression from Lani ever since she dropped the Women's North American Championship, which again, she never should have had in the first place. Julia and Lani fought Roxy and Cora. The heels attacked during Julia's entrance, decently hard hitting between her and Perez. Jordan got shots on Jade, but ate Pop Rocks ringside. Julia took Roxy out with a missile dropkick off the apron, and they wound up fighting backstage. Cora caught Lani with her double underhook DDT to get the win. A much-needed victory for Jade, given she's literally done nothing but lose since returning. The match was just okay. There was nothing overly special about it. Jade's celebration, though, did get cut short because Vaquer's music hit, and she surprised her from behind with a sneak attack before breaking the kendo stick over her knee. Then she chased Cora through the crowd, and really that was about it. The women's main event scene, it's easily better than the men's from a wrestling standpoint. NXT does need to do a little bit of work on the character and story development, though. And as I said a moment ago, they got to figure out a way to cut through the language barrier with Julia and Vaquer just to get even more out of them. They've done well with some of their interviews, pre-tapes, and so on and so forth. And I don't expect these two, nor any wrestler who's learning a new language, because I certainly could not do it in a couple months. It would be impossible. But I do hope that they commit themselves to learning the language better going forward, because that will be crucial for them succeeding on the main roster. You're going to say, well, Silver King, Io Sky and Asuka don't speak English that well. Yes, they do. They actually do. They just were kind of hidden by the prior regime from speaking. Asuka, when she cuts a promo in English, you completely understand everything she's saying. Shinsuke Nakamura as well. Io Sky, when she's given the opportunity to. Kairi Sane, I'm not totally sure, because we just still don't really hear her speak that much, but absolutely the other three. So they can get there, both Julia and Vaquer. They just need to continue working at it. But that's probably one of the reasons why they're in NXT. Oba Femi opened hour 2, showing a ton of confidence while celebrating his Iron Survivor Challenge victory. He promised to claim his position on the throne at New Year's Evil, saying it was time for he and Trick Williams to finally cross paths after dominating their respective divisions in 2024. Out came Trick, but Eddie Thorpe interrupted before they could even get into it. He accused Oba of attacking him last week, saying he and his people have been through enough. Femi cut off his rant with a simple "shut your mouth," which popped me. Femi demanded to know whether Thorpe saw his attacker. He admitted he did not. He said, "No one could have hit me with anywhere near as much force and power. So it had to be you, Oba. And Femi was like, I appreciate that, which again, popped me. He turned his back as Trick went on with business. Eddie paced in the background, getting himself heated. That was a great visual. Williams said, how long one holds a championship is not as important as who he beats along the way. Femi said the only reason that he's been the NXT champion so long, he being Williams, is because Femi has allowed it. Oba again turned his back on Eddie, getting in Trick's face, promising, actually guaranteeing that it will be the end of his era. So Thorpe started complaining to Williams for not manning up as NXT champion and giving him the title match he deserves. He called him a, quote, manufactured sports entertainer and went on about his experience in Japanese dojos and so on and so forth. When Trick similarly just cut him off, told him to shut up, and he promised he would prove himself next week. This was basically Eddie being a shit stirrer to get what he wanted, as he had a huge grin on his face after getting slugged by Trick to end the segment. And to be fair, he did go and get a title match. This was by far the most interesting Thorpe has been, perhaps ever, in NXT. And yet, all of his lines fell flat. None of the fans gave a shit about him calling Williams manufactured, which spoke, I believe, more to their lack of care for Thorpe than anything else. Because that was actually a true and pretty solid line from him. I just don't know how many NXT fans are aware that he trained in a New Japan dojo and WWE took him from New Japan Strong. And it was like a pretty big deal when he decided to come over. And despite that, I don't want to say been underutilized, but from a character standpoint, he's not been popular, nor has he been someone worth pushing, to the main event level in really any significant way. So for him to break out that line made a ton of sense in reality. Just in kayfabe, that may have been the first time they ever heard that this guy trained in Japan. So they may not even have known what he was speaking about. That said, calling Trick a manufactured sports entertainer, that is dead on balls accurate, as what's her name would say from My Cousin Vinny. I'm forgetting. Marissa Tomei's character for some reason. Mona Lisa Vito. Dead on balls accurate. So yeah, I know. I liked the direction this was going. No question. I wish the fans responded to Thorpe a little bit better. But it's also difficult to buy into a guy like Eddie when, frankly, to be crass, he got completely bitched by both Oba and Trick in the same segment. Femi told him to shut up like he was a child. Thorpe took it. Williams basically did the same. He just kept whining. Thorpe went from positive Femi attacked him to not doing anything about it simply because Femi denied doing so. In the moment, that seemed odd. We found out later why that was the disposition that he took. But nothing Oba said in the moment actually proved Eddie's accusation to be false. It just felt like Thorpe was kind of ham-fisted into what was otherwise an extremely strong segment when Femi and Williams got the opportunity to go face-to-face. And I have no doubt that will continue building immensely strong over the coming weeks to New Year's Evil. There's a few more weeks left until then. They absolutely got off on the right foot. The question's going to be how they continue to develop it between now and then. Plus, what do they actually do in that match? Because Williams is nowhere ready to lose the title and get called up, yet Femi absolutely needs to be champion ahead of him at this juncture. My preference would be Trick losing the title and staying in NXT for at least another year, if not 18 months or even longer than that. I know some might say that will naturally cool him down. Well, my take is you need to be ready for the main roster. You can't just be popular. He is popular. He's not ready for the main roster. I also did like the Thorpe whodunit and how that still lingered after this segment, except they closed that loop in the final segment of the show. Thorpe revealed to Ava after signing the NXT title contract that he staged the entire attack himself to get a title match without having to go through 4 other guys in the Iron Survivor Challenge to earn it. Probably the most interesting thing he said or done, and it made his third wheel, whiny, complaining shtick in the earlier segment make far more sense in retrospect. Pretty interesting booking decision overall. Also, in, I guess, kayfabe, Ava deserved getting duped like that after the way she's treated Thorpe for the last month. So good on his character. And I really don't have any sympathy for Ava's character, that happening that way. So we just spoke about the women's division needing a little bit more work on the angle, right, for their storylines, for the main event storyline. This is a really interesting angle that they're doing with Trick, Oba, and Eddie as the third wheel. And I am interested to see how that plays out. Fraxium commiserated backstage about retaining the tag team championships and Nathan Frazier coming close in Iron Survivor. Axiom apologized for doubting Frazier, who said Axiom completely carried him in the title match. They each decided that the other would go make this right, presumably talking about them, I thought, getting singles title opportunities. It was cool seeing them emotionally come back together with mutual respect, realizing how integral one another is in the team's success. Then later backstage, Axiom informed Frazier he got himself a one-on-one match with Femi for next week. Frazier then informed Axiom that he got them a tag team title match also next week. So they're running back what happened at Deadline, but with the roles reversed. I truly hope all my praise for the character work Tuesday isn't for naught, because if they just drop the strap suddenly, that would be horrific. The match is going to be against Gallus, so I think that's pretty safe. Although if you wanted to take the titles off of them, using Gallus as a veteran team to kind of get that rub to the next new team that becomes champions would theoretically make sense. But I also hate the idea of Gallus getting a title match at all. Because don't forget, Ava did a whole summit. We're going to revitalize the tag team division. We want you guys going at each other for the tag team championships. That resulted not in a tournament or any type of system to determine a number one contender, but a simple battle royal. And Gallus wasn't even in the finals of the battle royal. And you had another tag team actually win a singles match on NXT. Now, I guess the argument you can make is, okay, fine, but they're former champions, so they're more deserving of a shot, I guess. But this was weak at best, and let's just hope that they don't actually win the titles next week. D'Angelo family confronted a depressed Ethan Page backstage, telling him to get over it. Page couldn't figure out how to get back the NXT title, and he declined an offered shot at the North American title, calling it a step down for him. So Tony D turned around with an open challenge to the entire locker room, only for Page to change his mind, saying if he can't win that title, his career is basically over. So yeah, the North American Championship, D'Angelo against Page. Tony landed a big spear. Ethan came back with a cutter. D'Angelo then landed his spinebuster finisher for the win. It was kind of strange that they've gone to that as opposed to the Fisherman's Neckbreaker, which was unique. But he does land that spinebuster pretty impactfully, so I guess it works. Page was dejected and broken after the bell while sitting on the apron. It all landed well enough. Since everyone knew Page wasn't winning the title, the match just kind of lacked drama. Both have done way better, but there was nothing particularly wrong with it. Page in the parking lot said he knows he's better and he can be better than the way he performed recently. And while he claims to be all ego, the reality is that he's lost, ashamed, and basically rudderless. So it's an internal crisis and a doubt angle. Definitely works for a guy who goes by all ego as a moniker. Makes me feel better about this not just being a write-off for the main roster. Instead, it seems like a situation where he's going to build himself back up into a champion. Given the lack of depth in the men's main event, it is necessary to keep him on this brand. The other option is you could move him into the tag team division, reform the North. And we've been talking about how that division is lacking teams. Well, if you do want to take the titles off for Axiom and move them up to the main roster, which needs tag teams and exciting tag teams and young tag teams and fast tag teams, then having the North win those titles off for Axiom, that's pretty much as good as you could possibly get. I'm not saying that's happening. I don't know one thing from another, just speculating in terms of what could be next with Page. There's also an interesting parallel at play here as well. NXT is in Lowell, Massachusetts next week. That's the location where Shawn Michaels told us he lost his smile when he walked away from then WWF. Given how much he likes to reuse and reference old storylines and spots, it's quite possible that we get that from Page here, whether it's a brief vacation or ultimately for the transfer window deal that, of course, we do not want. But let's go ahead and see what happens next week. Javon Evans fought Wes Lee. This was so much better than their one-on-one showing at Deadline. Night and day. Wes sold Javon's kicks like absolute death. Lee countered a double underhook powerbomb into a hurricanrana, only to get caught with a running Spanish fly and Pearl River plunge. Wes got caught trying to cheat with the ropes, but hit a tornado DDT and cardiac kick for a false finish. Javon hit his double jump tornado splash, which might now have a name, Middle of the Road, I think they're calling it, for the win. Real nice showing for both guys, 3.75 stars B+. Wes worked this match like he was trying to get a job in the territory, just selling and selling and selling. It was a bit slower than I expected. I'm starting to wonder if Wes is maybe working his way back from an injury still or something, but the work was high quality by them across the board. The Pearl River Plunge got extra credit from me. One of my favorite moves of all time. Maybe I'm reading into it a little too much, the result, but I'm starting to wonder if this was Wes going out on his back before the transfer window opens. Not sure there's more for him to accomplish in NXT because it seems like they're not going to give him the main title. And at age 30, it's probably time to see what he can go and do on the main roster. If he's making that transition, it's even worse timing that he cut his braids and is getting called up looking like a totally generic wrestler. But we'll have to see whether that is even the case, or perhaps I'm putting the cart before the horse here. Zarya and Sol Ruka backstage were still juiced about the Iron Survivor Challenge. Zarya said it made her feel alive, while Ruka remained frustrated about being stuck in the penalty box at the end. The Meta Girls came in talking shit, saying they would have won if they were in the match. Lash Legend stepped to Zarya in particular, saying she didn't measure up to her. Ruka stood up to her. Jakara Jackson shot back, and the assumption was that this would lead to a match. Juxtaposed directly with that Julia Lani segment, all four of these women were way more believable just in speaking. Perfectly solid setup for a TV match. I'm definitely interested in seeing Zarya and Legend together because that is going to be a couple big, meaty women slapping meat.
I need some meat. Yeah.
Lexus King spoke with Charlie Dempsey backstage, proud of his integrity turn and improved wrestling skill. Dempsey decided to consider another Heritage Cup Challenge request. Then he expressed his pride in NQCC over their performances at Deadline. Out the Mud came through with Jada Parker telling Ren to thank her for even getting an opportunity. It got heated between all of them. We later saw King speaking with Ryan Leaf. Yeah, that Ryan Leaf, of all people. They each called the other an inspiration for how they've turned their lives around. We learned it was Leaf who suggested King go to Minnesota to cut his promo last week. Dempsey then came in saying he would grant King the rematch in 2 weeks as long as he came through a workout and stuck with him the entire time. I did not have Ryan Leaf in WWE on my 2024 bingo card at all. And yet, that's what we got, and it somehow worked. This was basically a CW crossover. Leaf calls Pac-12 college football games, but it did fit with the King character. The Dempsey interactions worked, and doing an out-of-arena workout segment in the dojo, presumably, is absolutely going to be a fun time next week. Fatal Influence were discussing Gigi Dolan with JC Jane, saying she was obsessed with her, while Fallon Henley was sure that Gigi just wanted the North American title. That seemed to piss JC off. Dolan and Tatum Paxley, holding a green-haired doll, then got confronted by Izzy Dame, who demanded a rematch as the creepy trio again sidled up to the ladies. Sean Spears was telling Dame he was impressed by her, only for her to basically say, I know, flip her hair, and walk away. Izzy already has the character part of this down. Supernatural, just the right amount of confidence and bitchiness kind of all rolled into one. Nice little segment other than the three creeps. Dolan and Paxley fought Fatal Influence in a tag team match. Tatum basically did like a spinning inverted Olympic slam, only to get distracted by Fallon and leveled, with Vic Joseph calling it rolling encore from JC, a rolling elbow strike, basically. Did my constant complaining about a lack of finisher moves finally reach the right folks at NXT? Vic has been all about calling moves over the last week or so. Maybe it's just him changing his game. Maybe it's a directive from Shawn Michaels. I don't know. But move names are being called, and half of them I'd never even heard before. Maybe it's me not listening, but I did not know that was called Rolling Encore from JC Jane. As the post-match attack continued, Shotzi made a surprise return back with the long green hair. Huge pop from the crowd as the faces stood tall with a Shotzi tope suicida, leveling Fatal Influence and ending the segment. Really hot return for Shotzi. She's been out since February with an ACL tear. Obviously, the doll tease happened again with Shotzi like it did for Gigi. Might have preferred Shotzi coming back in one of the main roster tournaments, but she was straight up shot out of a cannon here. I believe she was cameoing in NXT upon getting injured, so perhaps they can run a short program before she does get back to the main roster around WrestleMania season. But it is a perfect trio pairing with Gigi and Tatum, plus the reception to Shotzi was fantastic. I could definitely see that trio actually making it on the main roster. Think Riot Squad, but like actually pushed and utilized. That's the way I see them. Josh Briggs got a promo package recounting his time in Japan with Pro Wrestling Noah. Yoshiki Inamura shared his perspective of jumping at the opportunity to work with WWE alongside Briggs. While Briggs admitted he didn't want to be part of another tag team again, he said the ability to create chaos with Inamura was too attractive to pass up. Booker T, credit to him, he put this over huge after it was over, which was good because the fans, I felt, didn't totally buy into it initially. Nice package, solid explanation for them teaming. This was actually needed, and I didn't even realize it given the Brooks Jensen deal. And I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing Briggs and Inamura fight Jensen and what's that guy's name? Nico Vance is the other dude with Shawn Spears. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that as a storyline at some point. And lastly, from NXT, we had Hank and Tank against Tyreek Igwe and Tyson DuPont.
4 big men slapping meat equals excitement.
Tank Ledger wrestled with a cast entirely over his right hand. Hank Walker got the hot tag, hitting a huge boss man slam, plus their collision power slam finisher for the win. DuPont dapped up after the bell, but Igwe again refused, given they had just lost. Better match than I expected at the opening bell, but it really didn't do anything for me. Hank and Tank have personality, but their look is terrible and immensely basic. It's just another version of Heavy Machinery, except not nearly as funny. Igwe and DuPont, they actually have an impressive look, but zero personality because they've been given no opportunities to show it. It's situations like this that make me wish WWE actually had a 4th show. NXT as advanced developmental partial third brand, and then an actual developmental show with storylines and the like. And I'm not talking about Level Up. I'm talking about a real 1-hour NXT like back in the day before it blew up, because there's simply just not much reason for a match like this to happen on NXT main when time can be spent on better, more developed talents that are just not getting opportunities on television. And again, this wasn't bad at all. Like all 4 guys, kind of curious to see where it goes. It's just something that doesn't totally belong on NXT. It's like when I see something on Dynamite or Collision, I'm like, why wasn't this just on Rampage? Like, why are you putting this on one of your main shows? Or if it's on Dynamite, why aren't you just putting this on Rampage? Like, what are you doing? Same kind of idea here. I wish they had another show where they could put some stuff like this on it and maybe cross it over to NXT. So if something's hitting and fans are really loving it, then they move it over to the brand. But if not, it stays on the more developmental show. We will see what happens with WWE going forward. No inkling of something like that coming immediately, but there is some interesting stuff in the works with WWE shoulder programming. So that wraps up NXT this week. I would not call it the best post-premium live event show that they've done this year, probably not even close to that, but it was a completely solid episode from top to bottom. And again, when you finish your 2 hours of NXT and you're sitting there kind of taking it in, the question is always, did I waste my time tonight? And the answer is always no, right? It's just always super entertaining, even if perhaps it's not your favorite episode or something even that notable. So with NXT kind of in the books, let's go ahead, move over to AEW. We do have Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage to discuss. There were also a number of news items in AEW this week. I don't have the opportunity or time to touch on all of them right now. I'll try to get to some more next week. We're still doing a lot of stuff on the back end with the show. We're building the 2024 Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties, the Getting Over Year in Review. So I've just been off a little bit when it comes to news, but there was one item I wanted to discuss. AEW held its All In Texas press conference Monday, and Bryan Danielson was there. Obviously, he's a notable name, and even if he's no longer a full-time wrestler, he's going to be around the company. But just as was the case with Becky Lynch and WWE, this was notable to me because he was at this event despite supposedly not being under AEW contract. Beyond that, though, zero mention was made by this guy of the attempted murder committed on him last time he was on TV or the Death Riders or anything like that. He just dressed normally, walked around, acted like everything was hunky-dory. If it was a corporate event, sure, that would be fine. This was a fan event. It's the little things like that that matter, and AEW continues to miss them. Something else I thought was odd, and it wasn't every performer that was at this press conference, but the vast majority of them were former WWE superstars. And I'm not suggesting in any way that they should have hidden all of them and only had AEW originals, for lack of a better term. But it does speak to a flaw, let's call it, in the star-making process of your company, when the vast majority of the people you're putting front and center for an event like this are just people who kind of got cycled out of WWE, whether by WWE's choice or their own choice, deciding to try their hand somewhere else. So that's just something they really need to take into consideration going forward. I'm not saying to lessen the number of former WWE superstars at these events, but I am saying to increase the AEW originals so it's at least 50-50 or at least closer to that. And that's not the way it came across. Beyond that, unfortunately, I mean, I don't know if I saw an early video, but I mean, Danielson was on stage speaking and it seemed like the event was full go at the time. There were maybe like 100 people there. And that's including one guy I think was wearing like a Deadpool costume for a stadium show announcement. And I'm not saying they're not going to sell tickets. Well, I do think they're going to do a great job selling in Texas at the Texas Ranger Stadium, I believe is where it's being held. I think they're going to do extremely well. But that's not a good look. To do a big event like that and have 100 people, maybe 150 if I'm being generous there. I mean, WWE will do a day before pre-show for a B-level, premium live event, and there's going to be like thousands of people there. I know you can't really compare WWE to AEW, but this was a big stadium event in Texas, of all places, a major city in Texas, and 100, 150 people. That's not what I would call a good look. Maybe they should have done it at night as opposed to during the day, during a work day. That probably would have been better. Okay, let's get to the actual product. From the standpoint of entertaining wrestling, Friday was the best Rampage probably of the entire year. 3 quality Continental Classic matches with typical thrown together bullshit women's match just to say they had one on the show. That was a joke. That said, unfortunately, it was the second lowest rated Rampage of the entire year in its regular day and time, 177,000 viewers. That's about 50% of what it was pulling at the beginning of 2024. Of course, there's only like 2 more episodes of Rampage left in its entire run. Collision on Saturday was taped, I believe, from GalaxyCon, and the smaller venue setup, real nice. It provided a more intimate, more exciting atmosphere for the show. It certainly had a smaller time look and feel for the product, but the show is better for it, as far as I was concerned. I enjoyed watching it more than it being a big-time product in front of 2,000 people spread across a 10,000-seat arena. And again, from a wrestling standpoint, Collision was super entertaining. Some damn good matches on that show. Unfortunately, Collision again did below 300,000 viewers, but it was against NXT Deadline, and that certainly did not help. Dynamite was one of the best episodes in a while. In fact, coupling that with Rampage and Collision, it was probably the most entertaining week that AEW has put together maybe in the last half of the year. I'm talking about an entire week, start to finish. I did not feel like my time was completely wasted with the weekend shows. Continental Classic, I guess, had a lot to do with that. Dynamite actually had some exciting moments. Now, the tournament matches, they only take you so far, and the 2 big men storylines are not hitting for me at all. Yet, despite that, I still thought the shows were good. In terms of story-relevant matches, outside of Continental Classic, it was 3 of 7, so again, under 50%, but there were 8 Continental Classic matches that carried the water for all 3 shows, and let's get into it. On Collision, Jon Moxley and the Death Riders came out with Mox saying people in AEW think they want to be champion, but they're not ready to do what's necessary to hold the title, let alone look at it. Mox said he respected Jay White as a wrestler, but called him a child. He insulted Hangman Page as self-destructive and said Orange Cassidy already proved he doesn't have what it takes. Fans started legit chanting boring and then bullshit. Mox threatened to bash Cassidy's skull and take him out for good if he pisses him off again. So Orange came out, stepped right into the lion's den, and said he's okay never being champion, but he'll never stop until Mox is no longer champion, unless Mox kills him. Then he threw the mic, his glasses, his jacket, and his t-shirt at all of the men. So Marina Shafir hits him in the back of the head with a briefcase, and they all attack him, and then they carry him out. No babyface help. This despite immediately after commercial, FTR standing right there backstage. Darby Allin and Willow Nightingale had already wrestled on the show, plus his friend Mark Briscoe was on the card. None of them decided to help him in that moment he was getting attacked. That's immensely dumb babyface shit, even for Cassidy, to put himself in that position when a guy said he wanted to cave his skull in. Now, carrying him off was way more interesting than just like murdering him on the spot. But the payoff was, for some reason, the Death Riders backstage in clear view of everyone, trying to pour cleaner through a funnel into his mouth. Why they needed a funnel, I have absolutely no idea. Except FTR saw this. They waited about 30 seconds for some reason, and then they smacked it out of Mox's hand. They had a steel pipe, so the Death Riders retreated. At least FTR saved them. Where was everyone else? Do AEW wrestlers just like have their matches and then leave the arena, this is just not working. Suffocation, poisoning. I mean, what are we doing here? On top of all of that, it just comes across as so forced and corny, you know? Like a guy acting tough and crazy instead of just being tough and crazy. That's what I want. Brian Pillman was crazy. Stone Cold Steve Austin was tough. Jon Moxley is acting tough and crazy. At least, again, that's how it comes across on television. On Dynamite, Mox and Pac fought Cassidy and White. Orange hit consecutive tornado DDTs and bit Mox's head, as one does, before a diving DDT. Then he hit a third tornado DDT and a beach break for a false finish. Orange punches on Wheeler Yuta and Mox set up for the finish, only for Hangman Page to form tackle Mox for the disqualification. Page shoved Cassidy when he pulled him off. Then they fought with Cassidy inadvertently hitting Orange punch on White. He did the same to Hangman on purpose, only for White to hit Blade Runner on Orange, ending it. The faces started yelling at each other, only for Death Riders, still without Claudio Castagnoli for some reason, by the way, to beat them down even further. The crowd was super into this match, but petered out from the disqualification onward. That is typically what continues to happen with this angle. Fans buy into swaths of it, but by the time each segment ends, there's just a lack of care for the direction. I felt the exact same as them watching this. High quality and fun action. Orange's over-reliance on tornado DDTs is absolutely maddening. I also enjoyed the Hangman DQ excuse and the faces getting into it with one another, though they should all theoretically be smarter than that. Also, if you're going to do a Hangman DQ, don't drag this out for 14, 15 minutes. Give the women very little time in the main event. If you're going to do a DQ, you can do that after 9 minutes and it's going to hit exactly the same way. It also doesn't make sense still for me why the other anti-Death Rider folks don't get involved in situations like this. Later backstage, Mox said being a marked man is the only way to live. He ranted about the faces' egos ruining their lives as each wants a title shot, while juxtaposed to them, he's all about his people. Mox decided to put his championship up against all of them in a fatal four-way match at World's End. What's funny is that AEW has never used that phrase before because it's a WWE term. Oh, Mox, come on, you rascal. That's simultaneously a badass move by his character to say, hey, I'll fight three of you. Also immensely stupid from a champion. How does his character justify going from saying no one deserves a title shot to giving it to three different guys simultaneously so he can continue living as a marked man? Just makes him sound like a masochist. The booking is obvious, though. All three faces cost each other the title. Mox prevails. Christian Cage tries but fails to cash in, and that's what you do. It all makes sense. Even if Hangman in kayfabe is undeserving, having lost consecutive matches to Jay, really should just be White getting the title match. Orange already lost to him. Hangman's lost two to Jay. But since it was the champion who issued the challenge, in kayfabe, that is fine, right? It's his prerogative to go ahead and do that. After this was over, Christian cut a promo from a suite saying he hates everyone in the match. Christian said he won't miss cashing in after the four-way this time. So he basically suggested he would drive Mox back into alcoholism and rehab when he wins the title. Hook showed up unnecessarily, breaking the window of the suite door with his cast before beating Christian down, locking in Red Run, and then he failed to throw him off the balcony. He also got shots on the rest of the patriarchy before running away. I guess Christian at least changed up his promo from "your father is dead" to "you're an alcoholic." It did kind of ring hollow, him shit-talking a heel like that. Outside of the try-to-be badass glass break, I thought Hook's attack was pretty strong. I did think he'd sell the hand injury a bit longer, so that was disappointing, but alas, what are you going to do? On Collision, Thunder Rosa looked completely different to me for some reason. I couldn't figure out why. Maybe it was just her hair and the face paint. Anyway, she said she'd be watching the women's match with a focus on getting the championship back sooner than later. Really good promo from her, actually. On Collision, Mina Shirakawa beat Emi Sakura in 10 minutes. Given Mina was about to challenge for the women's title, this was an absolutely absurd match. Sakura got the vast majority of the offense and looked dominant, despite never winning a single match in her entire AEW TV career. I literally had to look it up. Dumb booking from top to bottom here. Way to make a challenger look like shit. On Dynamite, we got the title match. Mariah May defending against Shirakawa. This main evented, which basically told you something was probably coming after the fact, given it was winter is coming. Mina landed a back fist but couldn't cover or execute a second figure 4 attempt. She had a second back fist, May didn't even go down, and a draping DDT for a rope break. Mariah came back with 2 excellent pump knees and Mayday for a false finish. Mina countered a second into a botched crucifix cover and hit a flying sling blade. Then she hit her glorious driver for a flat 2. That was disappointing that it was a flat 2. May immediately hit her headbutt and Storm Zero to win. I hated the sudden end after Mariah half no-sold a finisher with a flat 2 kickout, but I did enjoy the rest of the match. Good work between both of them. As you would expect, people who have worked together know each other for a long time. Toni Storm returned immediately after the bell with her original look and music. Backwards hat, eye black, red and black stuff, whole deal. She looked amazing, got a fantastic pop, and then the show ended. She looked like she got emotional seeing the reaction to her return. That was super sweet. Storm made her huge, long-awaited comeback after 3.5 months away and just stood there. Didn't go after her rival, who stabbed her in the back, didn't yell at her, didn't save Mina from something. Nothing. AEW didn't even let it linger for long crowd reaction shots. Instead, they focused on Thunder, who just happened to have a WTF sign in the front row, like she was Wile E. Coyote or something like that. Now, I'm super glad Toni is back. Like I said, she looked great. I love that she's not doing the timeless gimmick anymore. Though I was super into my idea that you'll remember I pitched on this show of having her go through like generations with it. Comes back, she's, 60s Toni Storm, then 70s, then 80s. I know that would have worked if they did it, but it's fine that they're not doing it at all. Going in this direction, she should have no memory of timeless whatsoever. No idea what anyone is talking about when they mention it, stuff like that. They can always get back into it with a knock on the head or a traumatizing loss or whatever the case might be. I hope it is played that way. All of that was a massive, massive positive. AEW not capitalizing on the return with any type of moment that could potentially go viral and drive viewership, that was a negative. Huge missed opportunity, as is so often the case with them. Let's move to the Continental Classic matches. On Rampage, Kazuchika Okada beat Mark Briscoe. This was a fun Blue League match and the best of the 3 held on Friday. Definitely the right winner, obviously, with Okada going over. Briscoe twice countered Rainmaker, but Okada thrice prevented Jay Driller with a nice Rainmaker counter for the win. I'm glad I took the time to watch this match. 3.5 stars and a B. On Rampage, Daniel Garcia beat the Beast Mortos in a Blue League match. Definitely the right winner here, given Garcia is the TNT champion. It would have been nice for Mortos to get a win and maybe challenge for the title on the back end, but that's fine. Nice spot where Garcia hit a superplex and he went for more, but he collapsed for a cover. He ultimately won with a jackknife cover. On Rampage, Ricochet beat Commander in a Gold League match. This was the main event. Ridiculous non-contact flippy shit at the beginning, including one point where Commander literally gave Ricochet a hand to help him up from the ground to do a flip. Like, it was ridiculous. Commander hit a nice double jump springboard Rana. Ricochet did a vertical suplex spot on the ring apron, a springboard 450, and a pickup Death Valley driver before hitting his terrible finisher. Athletic, technically good, not notable. On Collision, Darby Allin beat Commander in a Gold League match. Nice work between them. Better than the Ricochet match, for me at least. Not sure it's exactly fair in kayfabe for some guys to wrestle tournament matches in consecutive nights, while others go like a week or more without wrestling at all. It doesn't really make sense. Darby took a Poison Rana and Cannonball Tope Suicida. He avoided the rope walk 450 and trapped Commander for the pin. I would have liked to see this guy Darby, who has been defeated clean in like 2 or 3 straight matches, win decisively with a finisher against the literal jobber of the league. I do not understand having him win with a trap pinning combination against Commander. You want him to beat Brody King that way or Claudio Castagnoli? Fine. Commander, he needs to hit his finisher, go over clean, shake his hand after the bell if you want to make them good. You want to make them look good. That's it. On Collision, Okada and Kyle Fletcher fought in a Blue League match that was probably the best Continental Classic match thus far of this year's tournament. I had it at 4 stars, A-. Okada landed Rainmaker but didn't cover at first. Fletcher then twice countered Rainmakers, the second one delivering a low blow as the referee was ducking for cover. He added his brainbuster for the win. They're clearly going Fletcher Will Ospreay, so he needed a big win on the way to that match. Nice protection from Okada here. even if it was a tad weak overall. There were also some like Timu Randy Orton vibes from Fletcher in this match, which kind of seemed purposeful. It was odd, and I wonder if that was indeed the case or I'm just reading into it. On Collision, Briscoe beat Garcia in a Blue League match. This was Mark's first Continental Classic win, and it came against the new TNT champion, so my hope is that it leads to a title match after the tournament is over. They did an interview together that was taped on Rampage but aired Saturday about being nice to one another. Briscoe took a German suplex nearly on his head, came back with a cool like burning hammer style driver to end it. It was really nice. I gave it 3.75 stars B+. Briscoe and Okada really wrestled well over the weekend. And on Dynamite, we had 2 on Dynamite, but one of them was Ospreay beating Claudio in a Gold League match. Excalibur twice or thrice screamed about this being a first-time matchup, except he corrected himself before the bell even rang because it wasn't a first-time matchup. Ospreay had some fresh black and white gear, almost like Punisher-inspired. He looked good. He missed a Sky Twister, but hit his Oz Cutter, continuing to sell the arm. Claudio countered Hidden Blade with a great pop-up European uppercut and a huge lariat. Seconds later, Ospreay countered Ricola Bomb into a jackknife cover for ostensibly what was a 5 count. I think it would have been more effective if we didn't just see Garcia use that finisher or that finishing pinfall combination in a Continental Classic match literal days earlier. At least come up with a different way, right? This was the 3rd trap finish in a Continental Classic match in 1 week. Claudio attacked Will immediately after the bell, only for Darby to chase him away with a bat. So Allen was ready and willing to save Will, with whom he has no bond or relationship, but not the other babyfaces fighting Death Riders. That just doesn't make any sense. It was a damn good match with an understandably lackluster ending to get Ospreay the win and protect Castagnoli at the same time. Darby later got interviewed about the Death Riders. Mid-interview, he starts punching himself in the face 3 times, starts spitting blood everywhere, saying the violence doesn't bother him, but no one is doing anything about it, and that's an issue. He said winning the Continental Classic is important because it represents the best of AEW, which is where the best wrestle. I'm kidding. He didn't actually say that, so I'm not going to play the drop, but that's pretty much what he was alluding to. Darby said AEW is great because it gave Mox a second chance, but it also let Sting go out on his own terms, and it let Allen be himself. It was actually among his better interviews. He made a lot of salient points as well. The whole punching himself in the face, trying to be like Mick Foley, it just did not work at all. Mick was legitimately crazy as Mankind. Darby is just a daredevil who does stupid shit. Punching himself in the face, you don't need to be doing that, dude. On Dynamite, Ricochet beat Brody King in a Gold League match. The first half of this promo from Rick repeated the question that was asked of him, and he said he's in AEW for the competition. We know, dude. Then he pulled out MVP's card for no discernible reason and looked at it, saying he has all the cards. Like, Jesus. Ricochet hit a sunset flip powerbomb and shooting star press, only for Brody to immediately grab his throat like the Undertaker and stand up. King got DDT'd into an exposed turnbuckle, with Ricochet getting booed for taking advantage with 2 of his stupid ass finishers called the Spirit Gun, which is apparently an anime reference of some kind. Heel turn would actually make him interesting. I hope it happens, whether with Hurt Syndicate or not. I don't care. Turn him heel. Fun match. Actually fell a bit below my expectations, given how well King works with smaller guys. I hated the no-sell choke spot after 2 high-impact moves. That was just ridiculous. On Dynamite, Adam Cole fought Kyle O'Reilly. We saw MJF arrive earlier in the show. Kingdom interrupted O'Reilly backstage, saying he didn't need to do this. He blamed them for letting Roderick Strong get hurt. Cole looked better, but he was still jaundiced as hell. There were dual chants early, which was a really good sign. O'Reilly got knocked out with a super kick ringside when MJF came down trying to get a Dynamite Diamond Ring shot. Cole avoided it, knocked him off the apron, then caught O'Reilly in a small package to win. So the 4th match in AEW this week that ended in that type of fashion. MJF ran off, and that was it. O'Reilly refused to shake hands after the bell, with all of his friends confused. The match was nice. Let's talk about how this was built. So MJF spent 2 months away cutting taped bullshit promos. He returns it. Winter is coming, finally. He's on screen for maybe 30 seconds, no promo, nothing. Then you have Cole finally get his match against MJF, but neither he nor MJF speak on it after the fact to actually push the importance of their blood feud. You have Cole in the ring. You have MJF in the crowd. Hey, Cole, your literal best trait is your promo ability. Grab a mic, talk some shit, throw it down, and walk out. And MJF is there stunned, selling, oh my God, I can't believe I have to fight this guy. No selling of anything, Didn't seem like either of them cared they got the match. It just kind of ended. Also, this ring, the Dynamite Diamond ring, which you all know I've hated since its beginning, it's being integrated into the story really for no reason whatsoever. Now, I have no doubt, like next week, Cole's going to come out and say, the only way I can still hurt you is to take something that has immense value to you. And since you're a piece of shit and you only care about things worth money, I'm going to take your Dynamite Diamond ring. I mean, maybe that doesn't happen. I'm just guessing it will. But don't forget, MJF put all of these obstacles in Cole's path that he was unable to overcome to fight him. And all he had to do to actually get the match was win a singles match resulting from a battle royal. And that's obviously not to mention the entire convolution of the storyline in general, the heel face dynamics, all of that shit. It's just terribly booked at this juncture. And I truly hope that it ends at World's End before the year is out. I do not want this continuing into 2025. On Dynamite, we saw an interview with Mercedes Moné and Anna Jay. Mercedes said she thinks it's cute Anna trained in Japan and believes in herself, but at age 26, she was already a 5-time world champion. Where was she a world champion at, I wonder? Anna called her a living legend and referred to herself as an underdog who continues to prove people wrong. Then she literally did like the 1, 2, 3 kid thing. They have both done far worse in promos recently. So in that respect, this was a positive interaction. Again, Anna just has no business getting this title shot after literally just losing another, and she needs to go to acting school. On Collision, Powerhouse Hobbs backstage confronted Don Callis talking about getting ghosted while he was injured. He said he wanted Konosuke Takeshita's international championship. Callis agreed that he deserved a shot. He played it off as needing to check his schedule for a time and date, so on and so forth. This was actually sensible for Hobbs to demand that, given the relationship. It would be better if he actually earned it by wrestling and defeating quality opponents. This is the number 2 title in AEW after all, but I was totally fine with this setup. On Collision, Willow Nightingale beat Serena Deeb in 10 minutes. This was to advance in that Women's Cup qualifier, which is why it got time. Willow kicked out of Detox and won with Dr. Bomb. On Collision, FTR cut a promo about being a great tag team, surprise, surprise, but being more concerned about fighting for the fallen. This is because that show will be a special Dynamite, the first one of 2025, streaming on Max along with airing on TBS. And that show will be held in Asheville, North Carolina, which got hit really hard by the hurricane, devastated. I actually have a couple people I know who live there. I was going to vacation there. All of that obviously got canceled. But FTR is immensely boring and repetitive, but it was a nice message for a really good cause, at least. They cut a nearly identical promo on Dynamite, but added that they were putting their name in the hat for a, quote, big match on that show. They also challenged Death Riders for Collision. What possible big match could be on that show that involves tag teams other than the titles being on the line, right? Is that why Private Party won, so they can flip it to FTR in Asheville? I don't know about that one. Hopefully that's not the case. We will see. As far as this Dynamite on Max goes, though, I would expect Adam Copeland to return at the start of the year. Given it is in Asheville, you could also maybe have Samoa Joe come back, possibly Kenny Omega, to build the New Japan match that he's having, but that would be a lot of traveling for Omega to do that. Another option is Eddie Kingston. I just have zero idea what's happening with his recovery right now, but Adam Copeland returning in Asheville on Max, it makes all the sense in the world. If I was a betting man, which I am, I would bet on that. On Rampage, Chris Jericho bragged about a stupid Axl Rose style hat before cutting a promo on Matt Cardona, who apparently answered a New York-based challenge on Ring of Honor the night prior. Cardona interrupted, saying he's not the same guy Jericho used to know. He's been busting his ass and will win the title. Jericho respected him for being a bigger star now than ever before. That is not at all true. He's a better wrestler than he is now, no question. Maybe he's making more money, but he's not a bigger star. Anyway, they smacked each other, brawled with Brian Keith aiding a full-out 2-on-1 beatdown with an actual belt shot, like literally his belt buckle. Would be critical if this aired on Dynamite, but it was perfectly fine for Rampage. On Dynamite, Cardona backstage said it's great to be back in AEW where he belongs. He's not in AEW. He's still an independent wrestler who is fighting for a title in Ring of Honor, but appearing on AEW TV to promote it. Well, I guess he did challenge Keith for a Rampage match, so technically he will have another AEW match, but to say it's where he belongs, if it was where he belongs, then he should be getting signed. Regardless, they just should have kept this on the weekend. Jericho later answered with a New York Minute segment. The best part of this was Y2J wearing a real nice Rangers jersey. Shout out to Ted Irvine. On Dynamite, there was a second Bandito vignette with him fighting a bunch of townies in an Old West set, except he fought them with like wrestling moves and then drove off on a horse. If this was supposed to be like a dumb, cheesy movie style vignette, it was perfectly executed. If it was supposed to be at all serious, then it was not. I'm going to choose to believe the former is the case and therefore say that I liked it. On Rampage, Mortos beat Aaron Solo in 1 minute. Why? No reason. On Rampage, the Vendetta beat two jobbers in less than 3 minutes. AEW cared so little about this match that it literally started with everyone in the ring, despite there not being a commercial break prior to it. They're just like, we got to put this on TV. Why are we even bothering with this?
0.0.
0.0, Mr. Blutarski.
On Collision, Layla Gray read the riot act to Top Flight, Action Andretti, and Leo Rush for their actions in the Battle Royal, saying they're supposed to be working well together. You see, Action and Leo, they had matching glasses and apparently different gear last week, so we as viewers could see they're really not part of this crew anymore. It got heated between the two sides, with all of them deciding to fight. It's interesting to have infighting for a group that was never actually established as a group. Yeah, Andretti has worked with them for a while. Rush has been in and out. So it was a decent segment, but a little bit odd. And then on Dynamite, Private Party were cutting a promo backstage when Andretti and Rush, wearing the dumbest jackets I've ever seen in my life, worse than Seth Rollins jackets. Actually, it may have been a jacket that Seth Rollins wore at some point. I'm not sure. But they confronted, wanting a title shot. Top Flight then came in pointing out they haven't even won a tag team match. Facts. Private Party decided they should fight at Collision for a number one contendership. Then they aggressively shook hands. Now, you heard what I just said seconds ago. They had already decided to have a match 4 days earlier. So Private Party really should have said, hey, that match you guys are having, why don't we make it a number one contendership? Instead, it sounded like they made the match. I hate that Private Party, the new champions, who, by the way, got a nice pop when they won that title off the Young Bucks, are literally the third wheel in a D-level tag team storyline to create another number one contender. There is zero momentum in the AEW tag team division, and there is less than zero momentum in the AEW trios division, which doesn't even exist anymore. They don't even mention the titles, defend them, nothing. So I have no idea what they're doing with tag team wrestling when they said that was supposed to be a big part of the company. So folks, look, that goes ahead and wraps up this week across NXT and AEW. While we are chatting right here, I'm going to go ahead and take a look and see if the ratings have come out for Dynamite. It does not appear as if they have, so we will just wrap up the show. The ratings did come out for NXT. We will share those next week. We'll also talk about the Dynamite ratings, and we'll go over everything together. The NXT rating, though, just spoiler alert, was good, hugely up from a week ago, which was somewhat surprising to me when I saw it. But again, we will discuss that next week. So wrapping up this episode, before we even get to all of the reminders, first, I want to make sure you know we have a WWE Saturday Night's Main Event Ultimate preview waiting for you if you have not listened to it yet. And don't forget, Saturday night, when that show goes off the air, we will indeed have a WWE Saturday Night's Main Event Instant Analysis podcast. Between now and then, don't forget the Getting Over Wrestling podcast.
It's all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast, and follow us on Blue Sky at Getting Over for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can send in questions and comments for the show. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reaction audio to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week, usually on Friday. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Thank you all for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling Podcast. Episode 675 comes up on Saturday, your WWE Saturday Night's Main Event Instant Analysis. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.